everybody. I'm going to contradict Rob. I'm not going to tell you any secrets at all. Those will remain secrets. Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thrilled to join you all at this gathering, literally. A real honor, though, to represent ESPN. As Rob mentioned, if you guys are sports fans, hopefully you'll like this talk. Some of my favorite things. It's marketing, it's sports, it's ESPN. So hope to take you on a little bit of a journey. I want to tell you our story. It's essentially the story of our company, kind of told through the eyes of our brand, which obviously they're synonymous. And then the notion of always keeping your eye on your target audience, your fans. So for us, serving sports fans has defined us for 40 years. And I'll kind of take you on the journey of how we've tried to maintain that focus and that intensity. As you know, ESPN sits at the cross-section of sports, media, and culture. It's a pretty awesome place to be, pretty intense, pretty challenging. We were founded as a 24/7 operation, so that enables us to keep our finger on the pulse and be on track with everything that's happening, whether it's a trend or in culture. Everything from, of course, LeBron and his impact on LA, to female gymnasts standing up and surviving together and making a statement, to Pat Mahomes redefining the quarterback position, to the shenanigans of Drake and OBJ, and Serena Williams becoming a mom. Like, we look at sports and culture from all angles. But before I get ahead of ourselves, I want to start at the beginning. So as Rob mentioned, ESPN was founded in 1979, literally founded by a sports fan, Bill Rasmussen, who wanted to start a 24/7 cable network in the middle of Connecticut, a city called Bristol, Connecticut. He had a vision that the sports world could withstand the notion of a 24/7 operation in sports. He created something before we even knew we needed it. And when I found ESPN when I was 8, I realized I needed it, and it had been missing. But he, of course, was ahead of his time. But it starts kind of a theme for us. We've always been led by sports fans. So if you walk on the campus of ESPN, we're all sports fans. We've had 8 presidents in our history, all rabid sports fans. And it all goes back to Bill Rasmussen starting our company through the eyes of a sports fan. So I want to show you some of the early days of ESPN on air, mishaps and all. And you'll see kind of where we began. We were a true startup, figuring it out as we went along, experimenting, bloops and blunders, and you'll see the makings of what has now become SportsCenter. So take a look.
I'll be sitting in for Jim Simpson on the NCAA College Preview.
But I think the one thing that's interesting about the USFL people, George, is...
Watch it! In Mobile, Alabama for SportsCenter, Lou Palmer, ESPN.
And for Philadelphia again. Get out of here. Play it again. As Syracuse comes from behind at the end to beat Georgetown.
You never gave me a cue.
You've got to be kidding me.
The Kansas City... And good evening, welcome to SportsCenter, along with Bob Lee, I'm Dan Patrick, and no, that's...
Ray Knight, I'm Peter Gavins. Yeah, I'm right.
Same team that had a 49% interest sold also had a major trade rescinded.
All right, so that's the latest word from Jack Donlin. What about the word from NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle?
Over here. Hello.
Sarge National Anthem. Miss Blood Green went shopping for a suit or some other.
You putz, we gotta do it again.
Welcome to ESPN's Tuesday Night Baseball.
Points out the franchise appears to finally be, I can't even read it when it's right in front of me. Oh, that's funny. Fans booed Canseco's 2 performances and even pounded on the truck he was in.
Thanks.
This is playoff positioning, and I am bringing it right to you.
Speaking of ties, that's the situation in the NL West when Sunday's play began. The Dodgers and Giants deadlocked. I'm heading south.
And no outtakes. I don't want them all over up there. I mean, my God, all you guys do is pick on me and pick on me, but I love it.
So we try to maintain that spirit today, but as you can see, we were a true startup, totally figuring it out as we went along, never before created. Again, I remember as a kid, people making fun of the concept of ESPN. It's like, who needs sports 24/7? Well, we've come a long way. This was our campus in 1980, literally 2 satellite dishes and an Oldsmobile. You'll see as we go that we've gotten a little more polished than that. Another thing I wanted to share is as we really were coming up and really defining our brand and our voice, we created the This is SportsCenter campaign, which I believe a lot of you are familiar with. But it really came to not only define SportsCenter and what this concept was, but also our brand. So I want to take you through some of that as well.
With the year 2000 approaching, we're trying to make sure the software here at SportsCenter is Y2K compliant.
Y2K test in 3, 2, 1.
Oops.
More from the NBA and an NFL trade right after this.
We definitely have a few bugs to work out, but we'll be ready.
Follow me! Follow me to freedom!
I don't know why Lindros has got to drop the gloves. Neely and Stevens, they don't fight anymore. They're respected around the league. And besides, I mean, penalty minutes doesn't equate to toughness in my book. I mean, when I think tough, Doug Gilmour's tough. Mark Messier's tough.
You need some more rouge.
Here? Mm-hmm. Thanks. You know, your foundation has looked great lately.
Thanks.
So this is SportsCenter. It's really taken on a life of its own. That was essentially our first marketing campaign that we ever did as a company. We still do it today, and I'll show you how we continue to rejuvenate it. But up to 400 spots have been created. And it, again, was based on this notion, this fantastical notion that if there was a center of a sports universe, it's in Bristol, Connecticut. And it's really interesting because when we came up with that concept, it was sort of crazy, right? It's like, what? Bristol, Connecticut cannot possibly be the center of the sports universe. And as we've grown, you could arguably say within the sports media landscape, Bristol, Connecticut is. This is our campus, you know, fast forward 10 years, we got up to 6 satellite dishes, a little more parking spaces, and as I said, we really started to get our footing. And world-class athletes, as you'll see, LeBron James, Alex Ovechkin wanted to be in our campaign. And to this day, those kinds of caliber athletes call us and say, I'd like to be in the next round of SportsCenter. So here's a few of the spots as we were really, really growing.
Hey, Ovi.
Hey, what's up?
What are you doing in the dark, man?
Nothing, just the late night filings.
Really? Late night filing? What are you, a Russian spy or something?
Yeah, right.
All right, I'll catch you later.
Yeah, see ya. Пронесло. Да уж, чуть не спалили.
So that campaign really started to define who ESPN was and really started catapulting us into this realm of really connecting with our fans and really making this impact in a way that people just hadn't expected from us. Again, we're on our way to growing and to really expanding on our capabilities. This is our campus back in 2012 at the ripe old age of 32. And you could see we were on our way, you know, to 50 business units, 9 cable networks from 1, huge digital business. This last month, we reached 96 million unique visitors in 1 month across our digital properties. We're everywhere that we need to be, whether it's mobile or social. We just really have and transformed our mission where we serve fans anytime, anywhere, and really pride ourselves on wrapping our fans in all that we do. The campus aerial view, just in case you wanted to see, up to 100 acres. Again, we're growing, growing. Got to keep our eye on our fans and on our mission. Another campaign that we came up with, again, to assert our voice and to show fans that really they're at the center of everything we do, is the Without Sports campaign. This was done in the early 2000s, and I just wanted to show you one spot from this, because you could see the continuity with our voice, but you could also look at the spot and say, maybe it could run today. You know, it remains fairly evergreen and fairly relevant. So take a look. This is our Without Sports campaign.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Oh, come on. Catch the ball before you run with it. Let's
Basketball 101. Basketball 101. That's what I'm
Tackle
talking about.
somebody. Tackle somebody now.
Oh, what are you doing? There you go. Just like we drew it up.
Tangled up with Roar.
Stay in the lane. Stay in the lane.
Body on somebody.
Knock him down.
Get out of the way. No, just hit somebody. No, Danny, go.
It's a disgrace. They ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
So I think, too, as you try to reach cult status, one good marker is that people start naming their kids after you. So again, as we're growing, a funny thing happened. People started naming their children ESPN, believe it or not. There are over 100 kids in the United States named ESPN, ESPN spelled with a Y, ESPN spelled with an I. There's one family where the son's name is Espin and the daughter's name is Espy. So that is my charge as, I guess, helping lead our marketing efforts, is to get more and more folks, maybe some of you, to name your children after ESPN. I don't know if there's that many children named Spotify or Doritos, but we've got a leg up on them. But truly, when you think about our strategy moving forward, it is really about enhancing that love that our fans have for us. From a research perspective even, if our fans move from liking us to loving us, they consume significantly more ESPN content. And so again, it sounds simple, and maybe it's something you want to keep in mind as marketers yourselves, but just that difference between liking something and truly loving something really is the forefront of our mind and really helps us drive consumption. So I took the reins leading our marketing department about 1.5 years ago, and one of the key things that I've focused on and our team is focused on is this notion of brand health. So you saw some of our early work. You've seen how ESPN has evolved a bit. You know, we didn't always talk in brand health language. We just always knew we had to connect with fans. We wanted to show who we were. We wanted to do entertaining commercials and marketing. But now, obviously, with all the different media challenges and different choices in the marketplace, brand health is really imperative to us. We're in a good place. We have a great foundation. 91% of Americans are familiar with ESPN. We're the #1 company when you use to follow sports. And more than anything, the fact that fans trust us and people trust us is really what we have to hang our hat on every day and can never lose sight of that. But, and one of the reasons I was asked to take the role, I believe, to lead our brand charge, was that over the past 7 years, we did take our eye off the ball a bit. We took our eye off the ball of our fans really being at the center. And we also grew explosively, as I mentioned. We went from this really humble company, and we still are humble, but a small, humble company, to this giant multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Fans notice that. They get it. They understand. They get a little skeptical. So when you look at a lot of the research over our brand from 2012 to 2018, it was things like we're approaching the conversation about ESPN being too corporate or a little inaccessible, and on our worst day, even a bit arrogant. So when I came on board, and I've been at ESPN, just for a little background, for 17 years. I started in our marketing department, actually worked on that LeBron James commercial, moved around the company, did a bunch of different things, more on the business side, and then came back into marketing 1.5 years ago. And it really was something that we all needed to reinstill, was this notion of the brand matters, we can't lose sight of our fans, we can't be seen as this corporate entity that is out of reach and isn't the biggest sports fan sitting next to you on the couch or sitting next to you as you look at your phone and you look at standings and scores and stories. So the biggest 2 items that we've been looking at as a department and as a group and even as a company now are 2 dimensions of our brand health in terms of relevance and differentiation. And it's the notion of being bold and caring for our fans. I'm kind of a broken record when it comes to caring about our fans, but it's so vital. And fans are smart, you're smart, you know when a brand cares about you and when they kind of don't, and when you're kind of just a consumer. But being bold is something that we really needed to reassert. You know, we created the category, 24/7 sports, we created that. So it's a really high bar to keep creating at that level where we're innovating and creating new products and new spaces in the sports field. But that's our charge, that's our mission if we're going to continue to lead. So being bold and showing fans we care are 2 things that our group has been laser focused on for the past 1.5 years. In so doing, we also reinstituted a brand architecture. So this gets a little wonky, a little marketing speak, but I figured you all care about that stuff. And it really helped us orchestrate our work and think about what we had to create and think about all the different agencies and partners that we wanted to work with to really reinvigorate our brand and reinvigorate our voice. So our brand architecture really has 3 pillars. It's leadership. Nobody has the sports portfolio that we have, particularly in the States. NFL rights, Major League Baseball rights, NBA rights, the best college football portfolio. We really have a leadership position when it comes to that. We also have a leadership position when it comes to our journalism and our ability to cover stories with credibility, but cohesively as well. Storytelling is something that we pride ourselves on as a company, both from a marketing and a content perspective, but we really haven't told the world that we're great storytellers. It's something that we do day in and day out, and actually if you poll a lot of fans, they just don't know the depth of which we tell stories. You may be familiar with the 30 for 30 brand. That's probably our lead horse when it comes to storytelling, and we have an incredible films unit. So in marketing, we feel like we need to tell that story a bit more. And then heritage, as I mentioned, getting back to what made us great, which is this is SportsCenter. So again, for a few years, we got a little complacent with that campaign. I didn't think the spots were that funny anymore. And we really, have taken another look at those commercials and that approach and to really go back to our DNA and what made that campaign special. So I really wanted to show you quite a lot of work that relates to these 3 pillars, and you really get a sense of where we're going with the brand now and into the future. So the first is around leadership. You'll see 3 spots. One around SEC football and the SEC conference in general, an incredible conference in the United States. Our work around college football and our leadership position with college football, and then the NFL. And with each of these properties, we're not just telling fans when to tune in. We're asserting our claim and our position that we're the leaders in these sports and in this marketplace, and nobody brings it to you better, ideally, that's the takeaway, than ESPN. So take a look.
Are you ready for some football? For the final run to the playoffs? Are you ready for the cold reality of season's end and cheering on other teams to knock your rivals out of contention?
How about them Cowboys?
Are you ready for a high-pressure push to the postseason? And for last year's draft picks to be this year's game changers? Are you ready for a fantasy punishment parade? Well, the on-field artillery is ready. The sideline heroes are ready. The Dak Dance craze is ready, and the knocks on the Hall of Fame door are ready. The wild plays and even wilder cards are ready. It's the season finale, and the winter reckoning is here. The final chapter of the NFL season starts now. Are you ready?
Again, one of the things we want to do is sort of bring our swagger back, right? Especially, again, in the States, nobody covers the NFL like we do. And we kind of found ourselves over the last couple of years just talking about our Monday Night Football games and sort of missing the big picture that if you love the NFL, come to ESPN. It's not just about the Monday night game. So that's a little insight into those spots. Storytelling, as I already mentioned, we feel like within marketing, we could tell stories as well as the content group. But we work hand in hand with our content group, and we feel like when ESPN's working at our best, marketing is great content, and content is great marketing for the brand overall. So you'll see here a number of spots. One is called There's No Place Like Sports, and it's a little bit of an interesting story. I'll just tell you a little bit about We really feel like women for ESPN have been a big target audience for us. We started a division called ESPNW really to get deeper with women and young women who are growing up playing sports like never before. So we wanted to create within the brand realm some spots that really spoke and raised women's eyes to say, like, ESPN is for you too. Like, in case you felt like we weren't, we're a home and a place that is telling stories that you would care about. We created this campaign, and lo and behold, all sports fans love it, which is the ideal, right? You target narrow, you catch wide, but you really have a point of view. So you'll see two spots in this mix around There's No Place Like Sports, and ideally they connect with you, even though they originally started to speak specifically to women. So take a look, 4 spots coming up.
The leader of this Pittsburgh defense is not getting up.
The ripple effect of our actions can be enormous.
Just never give up. No matter what nobody tell you, just keep moving. I'm gonna love you forever. You're giving me the most precious moment. 1075. Somebody tell you we can't do something, I guess we'll just show them.
Williamson thundering dunk. The 45 jerseys being placed on the mound.
Look directly into the camera, Bruce.
Here I am, as a human being. How can I express myself?
This is gonna sound terrible, but I am relevant.
We were the greatest team ever.
I took advantage of the moment. We all did.
No matter what life throws at you, how hard it beats you down, we can always get up and continue.
If we teach our girls how to box, they will have a chance.
The Crawleys were winning. Who doesn't want to support winners, right?
I'm dedicated to prove that at this age I can still play.
What Mark and I did in '90 was incredible.
I just wanted to be successful.
Apologies only go so far.
The hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Our opponents, they see a man in a wheelchair. To us, we see our coach, who's perfect.
I wish I can do more than what I can do sometimes. And those kids give me that feeling that I can do anything.
What he endures on a daily basis can't be more difficult.
If he's willing to do all of that, then what are we willing to do?
These kids would follow him no matter where he'd go.
Who says I can't? Nobody! Who says I can't? Nobody!
Jake Olson lost his eyesight at age 12.
Reaching out for help or talking to someone, it does really work.
All these millions of girls, they could come out to watch how women lead.
After a leave of absence, it's been an emotional week for Blake.
This is what it's about. It's about everybody being one.
She was 152 in the world.
Unthinkable.
The old record lasted 2 minutes.
They never said it would be easy.
So there is no place like sports, right? And that heart and that emotion that you feel is something we're really, really focused on and really bringing back in a lot of our communications. We talk about leadership, storytelling, heritage. I'll get to heritage in a second. But we have a fairly new president, Jimmy Pitaro. He's been with us 2 years, and he calls it substance, heart, and humor. That's how he looks at it, which is really interesting and really helpful to us. But the notion of that heart and the notion of why we all love sports it is those kind of heart-wrenching stories, that inspirational storytelling, and that notion of overcoming odds. So again, you'll be seeing that and hearing a lot of that from us. The last thing I want to show you is around heritage, and the notion of getting back to our DNA, the little engine that could mentality when we were literally 2 satellite dishes and an Oldsmobile and no parking spaces, and the notion of reconnecting with our fans through the Vista Sports Center campaign. So as I mentioned, we really took a hard look at that campaign. We created 10 new spots this past year. I'll show you just a few. But the notion of getting world-class athletes on our campus in these spots and really a wink and a nod to the sports world and ideally make you laugh is really important to us and to our mix.
I thought today's show was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was fun. Oh.
What do you think?
Let's go diagonal.
It's a bad read. Really bad read.
Any questions? No? I'll move on to the next slide. That's weird. It's working a second ago.
Hey, want to jump in here?
Hey, Pino! Pino! Coco Golf! Coco Golf! Can! Siakam! Taco Fall!
Our daycare is great here at ESPN, but the summer months kind of overwhelm the staff. So yeah, we brought in a full-time nanny. We're still interviewing for the position.
So when you look across that work, I mean, it is very intentional within our group to have those different tones, to get you fired up for the SEC, to get you fired up and ready for the NFL season, to take you through on this emotional journey with There's No Place Like Sports and tug at the heartstrings, and then ideally make you laugh, because at the end of the day, it is sports. But we're really working on that soup and that mix and trying to get all the different tones right, because we want to connect with every sports fan and want you to feel like ESPN really is a place for you. So that leads me to, and that was our, I'll go back to that. That was our, that's our campus now. So we've come a long way from 2 satellite dishes and an Oldsmobile to, that's a satellite farm in the in way background. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a satellite farm, but we have one. And umbrellas and manicured lawns and things like that. But I think it almost speaks to our challenge, which is don't take your eye off the ball. We're successful by so many metrics and by so many growth stories and case studies in business, but we need to remain humble and we need to think about who we're serving. And that brings me to, again, a little in the weeds on marketing speak, but our first ever, believe it or not, fan segmentation study. We really dove in over the past year and a half to take a deeper look at our fans. It's no longer good enough to say we reach people 18 to 49, or men or women, or avid or casual fans. We took a real deep dive into our fans, and there are 6 segments. And in looking at these 6 segments, it was really clear to us that for years, we've really only been speaking to the diehards and the traditionalists. And that for us to grow and to continue to be the leader, we had to kind of open up our vision and speak to story seekers, for one, and new schoolers. Folks who really don't even watch a live event, love sports, but may never tune in and watch an entire NBA game. Although they could tell you that Kawhi was the MVP of the All-Star game, and what sneakers Russell Westbrook was wearing last week, and what Damian Lillard's rapping. So they follow the sport, they're just not necessarily watching every game. But we can't take our eye off the fact that we need to serve them. So this is just, I won't get into great detail, but a segmentation that we've never done before to really dig deeper. And in doing so, there are 2 segments that are super clear to us that we have to win on. One is this notion of diehards. They're the most ardent, competitive fans that we reach. They essentially consume 40% of our television consumption and our ratings. So they are laser focused for us. And lo and behold, we found out 45% of them are women. So when we talk to women, we're speaking to diehard fans as well. And that was a big eye-opener. And then the story seeker. They tend to be our younger, more diverse target audience. And again, we got to bring them into the fold. We have to have them grow up loving ESPN the way that I grew up loving ESPN. So that's some new work that we've brought to the fore. But I think too, for you all as marketers, one of the biggest things you probably have to do is always rally your company around your ideas and your efforts. So one of the things that we felt we needed to do was create a new brand promise for ESPN. Not only for the marketing department, but for the company as a whole, as a real rallying cry and as a spark for us to think differently and to try new things. So for us, we embarked on an effort over the past year to really think about what does ESPN stand for today and what do we want you to do and what do we need to do to win. And this promise is meant to encourage us to be bold, for us to prioritize innovation as a company, and for us to reclaim that visionary leadership that we basically had 40 years ago. So we worked and we worked and we worked, and we came up with a new brand promise. And it's all around igniting the fan in all of us. It was important that it was really short, pithy, that every employee could remember it. But this notion of igniting is really, really important to us. This is how it breaks down a little bit so you get a better understanding. But igniters are visionary. They do drive distinction. They can ignite innovation. And it's the reminder that we need to ignite each other. And we need to think and be innovative every single day. This also recaptures the notion of fans being at the center of everything we do. The fan is always first for us. It fuels our love. It fuels our promise and drives our promise. And it's the notion of, like, that's why we get up in the morning every day working at ESPN. It's not only because we love sports and have a passion for sports ourselves, but to bring that to fans and to connect with fans in that way. And so this reasserts the notion that the fans are at the center of everything we do. And then lastly, it's the notion of all of us. You know, again, when I talked about us getting a little bit complacent, I think we a little bit took our eye off the ball, the fact that every fan matters. Whether you're watching 5 college football games on a Saturday, or you're watching 1, or you're watching none. If you love sports, you should love ESPN. So this notion of all of us, whether, again, man, woman, Hispanic, African American, young kid, older adult, all of us is expansive, it's not limiting, and it's welcoming. And again, it maybe seems simple, but we really had to reassert that internally for us to really think about new growth opportunities. So the last thing I want to share with you is this notion of we created a brand promise, but to really bring it to life, we created a lot of creative work around it. We created a manifesto, which maybe some of you have created before. But again, it's some poetry that brings igniting the fan in all of us to life. The notion of it's not about what you do or do not know, what game you have or have not seen, or how long you've been watching. Despite our differences, we're all pulling for something larger than ourselves that unites us forever. The joy, the heartbreak, the endless inspiration. Again, we wrote these words to really get people internally fired up and to reignite the marketing department, but also our agency partners and everybody we work with to say this is where ESPN is going now and for the future. So the last video I want to show you is our brand manifesto video, and it really brings this to life, and maybe you get a little tear or two, perhaps.
It doesn't matter who you are, or where you come from, or when it all began. If it was why you got up early, or why you stayed up late. If it was from the nosebleeds, or someone's shoulders. If it's because of a hand-me-down passion, or a tradition of superstition. If it's because of a curse, or a miracle. If it taught you how to fail, or how to fight. If it brought you to tears, or to your feet. It's not about what you do or do not know, what game you have or have not seen, or how long you've been watching. Despite our differences, we're all pulling for something larger than ourselves, that unites us forever. The joy, the heartbreak, the endless inspiration. It's more than a privilege. It's our calling. To ignite the fan in all of us.
So thank you. That's kind of a little bit of a journey through the history of the brand and our evolution of our brand, and really a look at kind of our modern day challenges. But at the heart, we have a huge passion for sports, and it is all about serving sports fans. So as marketers and as the folks behind the ESPN brand, that's our charge, is to keep our focus on that day and night and make sure the rest of the company does too. So thank you.
Grab a seat. We got time for some questions, yeah?
Cool.
I hope. I think there's going to be a couple microphones being passed around, am I right? But in the meantime, I wanted to say welcome to Canada.
Yes, I love
Who's your
Canada.
favorite hockey team?
The Rangers.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Good choice.
Yes,
Good choice.
yes.
That's respectable.
Big hockey fan, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I love that manifesto. Was touching and very powerful. A lot of the cult brand honorees that have graced our stage have brand manifestos, manifesto videos, but I'm wondering how, when, where do you use the manifesto to, indoctrinate staff and really kind of activate what, its true meaning?
We have quite a few things we do. I mean, we're actually still rolling out the notion of the manifesto and how do our employees get behind it. So we're doing quite a lot of internal events. But we basically, our president speaks about it. He shares it whenever he can. We develop it and share it in meetings whenever we can. We're always basically showing it. We have this thing called Rookie Camp, that when you join our company, again, you spend 2 days of orientation. This is now one of the things that you see. It's funny, though, because if you're not in marketing, people are like, well, why don't you just run that? And you're like, well, the clearances on some of that stuff is a little difficult. But it is just a piece that ideally you can't not see it in our hallways. And so that's what we're aiming to do. It's just a rallying cry for our entire employee base.
Yeah, you touched on ESPNW for a sec.
Yeah.
I understand that you were fairly instrumental in bringing that to life, and I wonder if you could share a little bit more of the story behind that.
Yeah, that was really interesting. It started about 10 years ago. I mentioned at the beginning that I started my career in marketing at ESPN, but when I left the marketing group, one of the things I did was work as the chief of staff for our president at the time, a gentleman named George Bodenheimer, a wonderful leader. And when I show the campus's evolution and this explosive growth, he was at the helm for all of it. Just an incredible guy. So really lucky to have worked by his side for 4 years. But that opportunity to sort of be at the forefront of the decision making in the company and see this explosive growth and think about our future and look at our long range plan, it was really clear to me that we weren't doing enough to think about the future and growth opportunities and new audiences. And then when you start doing that, it was clear to me we weren't doing enough to speak to women. And that having grown up as an athlete and growing up as a huge sports fan, I always loved ESPN. But I knew there were so many women out there that just really didn't think ESPN was for them. I mean, we literally did research, and that's what women would say. ESPN's credible, it's the authority, but I don't really feel like they're speaking to me. I feel like they're speaking to my husband, my boyfriend, my son, and so I really felt like that was a big problem. And so a few of us got together, did some research, and did the old pitch thing to the executive committee. We put together a whole plan, and we're lucky enough to get approval and launched a women's business called ESPNW 10 years ago, which is interesting being here at the gathering because the #1 successful thing that we've done at ESPNW is create events. We have the ESPNW Summit, and it's this gathering point essentially for women in the sports business, unlike any other, and it's really created this groundswell of interest and support for ESPNW above and beyond the website, above and beyond our social presence, and it speaks to the power of events. But yeah, I helped create that 10 years ago, and it's still going strong.
That's amazing.
And I think it's influenced a lot of this work, where we just talk about women in the female audience as vital to our future now, and it's not a big deal. It was a little controversial or had to be explained 10 years ago. So it's great to see that.
You shared with us your first ever audience segmentation study, or the results of it. Are you listening more to audiences than you ever have before?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I hit on the fact that we grew so quickly for a reason, in that we were filling a void. There's such an incredible passion for sports. We were, again, ahead of our time on some level, first mover advantage. And so we just caught this wave, and we just grew explosively. But I have to say, we necessarily didn't have to be that sophisticated when it came to marketing, right? We created funny campaigns and things like that, but literally we talked about avid and casual fans. I mean, you can't be more simple than that. Avid, you watch a lot of ESPN, casual, you don't. So it was sort of imperative for us to dig a little deeper and really think about all types of sports fans. And plus, the way the world is changing, we don't have the luxury of just talking to a certain specific type of sports fan. We want to talk to everybody, and we need to talk to everybody. So yeah, it's really important. I think we're having a conversation now about African American fans that we've never had before. And if you're really being honest, African American fans are our core audience. No segment of our audience watches more ESPN than African Americans. But if you had walked the halls of Bristol 15 years ago, I'm not sure anybody would have said that.
Interesting.
Or even known that.
Any questions out there? Does anyone I can't see a thing, so
yeah.
Just
It's actually helpful when you can't see.
Yeah, I know. There you go.
Since you brought up the market segmentation,
yeah.
Maybe this is one of those trade secrets, but I'm interested in the process and how much effort you put into that and how you went about it to get to that level of granularity with your market segmentation that you hadn't seen before.
Sure. One thing that's really fortunate is just the way we're organized as a company. Research sits within the marketing function. So we have an incredible research group. So it was essentially the notion of, you guys, the time has passed for us to just say avid and casual. We had actually done quite a lot of work on the ESPNW front into women and defining women and what types of women we were speaking to. So it was the notion of, again, a lot of surveys, a lot of polling, a lot of quantitative research. As you can imagine, it's a roll-up of quite a lot of different studies to really get to 6 definitive segments. Frankly, there were 9, but it just started getting super complicated. And so the notion of 6 that we, at least as a department, can understand is vital, and now they're all in our creative briefs. You know, when we write a creative brief and we talk about target audience, it has to be one of those 6 segments. But knowing that not everybody's as into this language as we are, for the rest of the company, we've pretty much boiled it down to diehards and story seekers, because those are the 2 most prominent, and story seekers is where the growth is. But I could take you through the real nuances of it if you want, but it's a massive effort for over 8 months. I think the biggest trick for us is simplifying it so people can understand it, and then the rest of the employee base can actually use it.
Are we okay for one more question? Okay, last one.
I think you nailed it with the categorizations of your fans. I definitely identify with the story seeker for sure.
You know, one thing on that, we do have a survey. So like you as an employee or you as a person, you know, we sent that around to our employees, and people took the survey and found out what they are. And for the most part, people weren't surprised, but there were some surprises. I'm a diehard, by the way. So you're a story seeker?
I am, but it depends on what season it is. I'll switch around.
Yeah.
So the segue into the application, or ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
I'm new to it, but I thought what you guys did was really interesting. I'm getting more interested in UFC.
Yes.
I think they're doing a really good marketing job, and as a sports fan, I'm very open to it. ESPN Plus linked me in through the discount you get on watching UFC fights if you subscribe to ESPN Plus.
Yep.
And then you see all these stories there. So what I found, though, as an ESPN fan, is I watch a lot of content, but now I find myself with 15 or 16 different subscriptions.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, can you talk a little bit more about how ESPN is approaching subscription fatigue, is what I like to describe it as? Because I'm looking at all these different things where I was saving money by dropping DirecTV, but now I'm spending more money on subscription. So what's going on in the world of in that space, that segment? How are you going to retain fans, if you will, without subscription fatigue?
Well, the simple answer, and I'll give you the complicated answer after that. The simple answer is the power of our brand, and I think that's why it's so imperative. Is that people need to understand what ESPN is all about and how vital we are to your enjoyment and your entertainment and your consumption, that you just have to have it, whether it's through your cable subscriber or direct to consumer with ESPN Plus. I think what we're seeing is just sort of this modern landscape shift within media consumption, right? We had cable bundles, particularly again in the United States, for so many years, where you had 450 watt channels, and lo and behold, you find out people are really only watching 10 or 15. But when you get down to it, yes, it's gotten incredibly expensive in some quarters, but it's a pretty good value for 450 channels for whatever you're paying a month, $150, $200. Some people are cutting the cord and going to subscriptions, and now they're finding that they have to have 15 subscriptions to get what they had on the cable front. So it's hard to predict where it's going to land, but there is going to be a shakeout where maybe you retain your cable network, cable subscription at a lower package perhaps, and you have 5 subscriptions. I think for us, it's imperative, as I said, to just be everywhere. You know, when we think about our strategy, it's being as strong as we possibly can, continue to be in the cable universe, while also having a great direct-to-consumer streaming property, while having an incredible app, while having incredible social feeds and voices. So again, our mission of serving sports fans is applicable because we need to be everywhere. But ultimately, it boils down to you have to love ESPN, and then you can kind of get us anywhere. That's really what we're trying to do, is just make the brand so vital to your enjoyment.
Thanks for joining us today.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.